So I'm going to now, this is a time distribution provided by RAT, so keep us on time. I'm going to go over my personal story. This is also by the popular demand, about 5 minutes or so. Then I'll move on to why we think it is important to celebrate NHPI. Okay, I'll explain this phrase later. Then our major presentation is on Asian American history, which is a summary, sort of, my recently published book by Rutgers University Press. But it's also a very important issues and concepts we, as Asian American studies lovers, teachers, students, and whoever interested in this subject should know. And finally, we'll move on to question and answer. So in case I linger around or spend more time than is allotted, so Rich will, please, you can stop me. Okay, here's my personal story, which is, I selected the information I think might be reflective and representative of immigrant history, because myself is immigrant. I was born in China, and I came to the United States in 1985 as an international student majoring in Asian American studies. My parents, who were born in the early 20th century, okay, in respectively 1910s, 1920s, they were the nationalist government officials. If you are familiar with Chinese history, you would know that. That was government ruled China prior to 1949, when communists took over. But after communists founded the People's Republic of China in 1949, my parents all became teachers, okay? So I was born into such a family. Both my maternal and paternal parents were, or grandparents were well off or well educated. So I had the chance to access my grandmother's personal library at early stage. I'm married to also an Asian American who is a physicist by training, okay, but he has 2 PhDs in both physics and biochemistry. I came to US in 1985. Why did I choose to study in Asian American history? So this is both I would say it's a personal choice as well as social circumstances. Okay, as I told you over and over, I came in 1985, which is about 15 years after Asian American studies was funded as an academic field. So it is emerging the new multi-interdisciplinary study, which inspired a lot of Asian Americans as well as non-Asian Americans to learn and research and write on their history. So I was interested in that because I came here as a foreign student studying American history, and I thought about what should be best dissertation topic, okay, to my advantage as well as to the society's best interest. So since I'm a woman, I decided, do women's history. I'm Chinese, maybe Chinese American women's history. So I started from there and I never stopped. Okay. In 1991, I joined the Truman State University, became a professor of history. And that is the only institution, my first and the last institution where I worked. So there in Midwest, because Missouri, Truman State University is located in northeast corner of Missouri. And Missouri, as one of the Midwest states, it has been stereotyped as a backward, people have all kinds of slurs or nicknames, okay, describing that region. That gave me certain advantage as well as disadvantage. Disadvantage is that I'm remote, far away from any major Asian American community. But the advantage is that I have a very close experience as both observant as well as participant and writer of the history of Asian Americans, especially in that heartland region. Okay, so you probably noticed that I have written in the past 4 decades about written and edited more than 35 books, and most of them covers very broad topics: family, gender, community, work, not only Chinese Americans, but also Japanese Americans and all Asian Americans. Up till now, I have this Asian American history published last year. So which is a culmination of my 40 years of teaching, writing, and disseminating. So I'm very excited and proud of this book because it is so far is regarded as the most comprehensive and the most complete general history on Asian Americans. It just not only covers Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, Filipinos, Vietnamese, Indians, those large Asian American groups, but as well as the smaller Asian American groups, as many as 27 of them, as counted by the US Census in 2020. And I also incorporated most recent sources I could find, both in English and in Chinese, because I have bilingual training and writing. I published also many books in Chinese language, and I was a middle school Chinese language teacher prior to my immigration. So this book is a very important link on Chinese in Asian American history with all the available sources, both the English and the Chinese, and all the recent scholarship. So the book, in many of the readers, including some of our audience, okay, I think Evelyn's here. Evelyn has been a supportive, very enthusiastic support of Asian American studies. She commented that this book is must read for anyone who is a community leader in Asian American community or anyone who is interested in Asian American studies. So Asian American history, why is important for us to celebrate Asian American History Heritage Month, which is what we now generally know. However, my sponsor, okay, which is Compass Family Services, used the term AANHPI. Okay, I'm going to explain it here in the second line, as you can see that. This term is much more inclusive compared to just Asian American or Asian American Pacific Islanders. As I said earlier, Asian American studies is an emerging field since 1968. And from the beginning, both scholars and community activists have discussed and debated what term we should use for this field. Okay, so eventually they landed in the term of Asian American Pacific Islanders. Why so? Because Asian American is a diverse group. You can't just focus one group, because initially they used the term Oriental group, or some even use the yellow power. But then they borrowed experience during the civil rights movement, the African American movement, the Hispanic American movement, decided to use Asian American as a term. In addition to that, they want to have umbrella organization to represent all the strengths of Asian Americans. And the US Census also counted Asian American Pacific Islanders as a category, okay, for both political and practical purpose. That's the term we used. but the term we have here, AANHPI, is more inclusive, right? AA means Asia, Asian Americans. That also include Asians from China, from anywhere in the Asian region, and the native Hawaiians and the Pacific Islanders. So why is this important, particularly during the COVID era, which started in 2019 and just ended probably last year, or it is still going on, okay? We don't know when it will really end. And since then, Asian Americans have suffered various assault, including verbal harassments, physical assaults, property damage, and even murder, okay? As we can see in some of the images there. And all of these attacks were categorized by scholars as well as community activists. Hello. Oh.
Dr. Ling, this is me. Will you do me a favor?
Yeah.
And can you unshare your screen and share it again? It looks like something has occurred, and
okay,
I'm not exactly sure what that's about. I'm trying to see if we can get it fixed on the back end. But now, if you could reshare, that would be great.
All right. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. And thank you everyone that reached out to me in the chat. We're trying to get things figured out on the back end. Not exactly sure how that occurred, but thank you, Dr. Ling. Sorry.
Is it clear now?
If you would reshare your screen, then I can let you know.
Okay.
And sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Ling.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you should just be able to reshare, and then we can keep going. There we go. And then it's okay. That's the Zoom screen, and then perfect. Now we are.
Fine, huh? It's clear. Okay.
Yep, and if you would go back to the full slide, that would be great. Thank you so much, Dr.
Yeah.
Ling.
So this is where we stopped. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, probably that is also an example of Asian hate, we see here. And the organization is called Stop AAPI Hate, which actually is headquartered in San Francisco, okay, where CFS is located. And this organization did statistics because they urged people to report any incidents to them. So they accumulated that all the reports, and just from March 2020 to March 21, this 1 year period, there are over 3,800 cases were reported. And the Pew Research Center also did the research recently. Among the people who surveyed, 3 in 10 of Asian Americans reported they faced racist jokes, slurs since the pandemic. Okay. And more individual cases, I have a couple of here. Okay. One also happened in San Francisco, as we can see here. It happened in 2021, February. 84-year-old Thai man was assaulted, okay, by Antoine Watson, okay, for no reason. Then he died of the injury. And this event aroused lots of protests throughout the country. The next one here, the Atlanta Spar shooting in 2021, March 16. And in this incident, the shooter shot 8 people. Among the 8 people, 6 were Asian women. Okay, that's why we see, this attack were characterized as sexism, racialism. Okay, because all these women were the workers in the massage salon, and this shooters reportedly frequented those salons, but he also was reported he hate this type of woman. Okay. And the most incident that happened last week was Chinese American Marine veteran by the name of Kevin Chin. He's 41 years old, and around the midnight, he went to this supermarket is called Jewel Osco in south side of Chicago. And he entered the door, then he didn't know, suddenly he was attacked by a couple of persons. Then pretty soon 7 to 8 people just hit him, beat him, and there's also racial slur there. Then he was a Marine, so he could protect himself. And then store assistant come to his rescue and led him to an emergency door. So he escaped from there. Then he reported to police. So this is a picture he took, okay, after he was admitted to the emergency room. He had some skin scratch, and he also reported as a headache. And this incident caused alarmed the Asian American community. So immediately, the Asian American community, not only in Chicago, but throughout the country, reported the case. So as a result, Chicago police rescued 4 suspects as of yesterday. Okay, so compared to the early incidents, this incident was fairly promptly handled. So we can see that the mass alert and people stand out. Okay, this victim, Kevin Chin, also briefly reported the case. He was not afraid of being assaulted again or suffer some retribution. Okay, here's the important elements Rat presented to me. I'm going to cover them in the following 30 to 40 minutes. I might overlap some, might combine some. Okay, so if you are interested in them, you can request a copy of my PowerPoint and access the recording afterward, okay, as promised by Red. So first, we're going to cover some basic concepts. Who are the Asian Americans? Asian Americans are a diverse group, but what is common is that they all came geographically from Asia continent, okay, be it from Southeast Asia, East Asia, Central Asia, or even Middle Asia, also is categorized as Asian Americans. So that is their commonality. Second, they all suffered a similar experience in their country of host, okay? They suffered a similar discrimination, exclusion, harassment, okay? And all this similar experiences based on their racial background. And there are as many as 27 groups as reported by 2020 US Census. And their population already reached more than 21 millions. Okay, that is just the officially recorded number, but there are many uncounted people there. So they are roughly make up 7% of the total population of our country. And among our Asian Americans, the largest group is the Chinese, which is about 24% of the total Asian American population. So generally, scholars divided them or grouped them into 5 large groups, including Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Indian, and the Filipino. They have been in America since the 19th century. So they are the so-called older or larger immigrant Asian American groups, and relatively more studies about them. And also there's 3 newer groups, Vietnamese, Laotian, and Cambodians. They have been in America since 1975, the end of Vietnam War. However, among these 3 groups, Vietnamese have emerged right now, become number 4 largest group after Chinese, Indian, Filipinos, and Vietnam. Okay, then number 4. Okay, after Chinese, Filipinos, Indians. So number 4 is Vietnamese. Okay, then they're followed by Filipinos, Korean, and the Japanese. Okay, this is the current order of the 7 largest groups. And a couple of definitions we want to clarify, because oftentimes people are confused about what is the distinctions between these different terms of immigrants or Asian-born or second generation or Asian Americans. Generally, scholars think the immigrants refer to Asians who lived and worked in the United States before the 1960s. While Asian-born or second generation refer to Asian Americans' children who grow up in the first half of the 20th century and onward, okay? So all the Asian Americans who are born in this country, they can be called Asian American or American-born or second generation Asian Americans. Then this Asian American, this term is more inclusive. Okay, it refers to all Asian after the mid-1960s, because since 1960s, most Asians were allowed to become American citizens, okay, through naturalization. So regardless of his or her place of birth. So if you want to refer to anyone, any Americans of Asian ancestry, so this probably is the safest term, Asian American. The population growth of Asian American is seen as the fastest minority in the United States. And the scholars, especially demographers, predicted that by 2060s, they will be largest minority group, even surpassing Latino Americans, African Americans, okay, with their growth of increase. So this is the fastest growing minority in US. So the numbers here, we can see that in 1960s, they counted only for 0.6% of the total population, but they increased to 2.1 in 1980s, then close to 3% in 1990s, and 4% in 2000, 6% in 2010, and 7.2% in 2020, of which 25% are Chinese. So relating to their background, okay, I want to present this picture here. As we all know that Asian Americans came to US like most immigrants in this country. They responded to the so-called gold rush. They came to US responding to the discovery of gold in California. So initially, the early newcomers were gold mine workers, okay? And the first groups of them are Chinese, then they were followed by Japanese, Korean, Indians, and Filipinos. Okay, so this is a statistics of each of the respective groups. And I want to make a comparison for the same time period. Well, less than 1 million Asians came to US. There are more than 35 million Europeans came. Okay, so from this picture, you can see those are the immigrants rushed in the country's door from Europe. Okay, so both pictures are widely used by the scholars and the community activists. And the Chinese immigration, unlike European immigration, suffered more exclusion. Okay, for example, there's exclusion acts against them, even though this legal term, I mean the official term of Exclusion Act was only towards the Chinese. Okay, there's the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And the other acts against Asia, they never included this term, exclusion, in the title of the law. Okay. So the National Origin Acts of 1922 banned all the Asians from coming. And the 1934 Tiding-McDuffie's Act banned the Filipinos from coming. And in addition to the exclusion, there's also naturalization laws from 1790 to 1952. It barred naturalized citizenship to non-whites. And the Asians also barred from owning land under the so-called alien land laws. The alien land laws initially was a legislature designed to eliminate absentee landlords from Europe, okay, mostly from England. But slowly it was targeted towards mainly Asians. Okay, when Asian immigrants came to America in the larger waves since mid-1850s. But from 1880s to 1920s, there are a number of states, about 15 states, adopted this law, mainly targeting Asian immigrants, okay? In 1920, it was a peak time in West Coast. Those laws were passed directly targeting Asians from owning land, okay? Then also there's anti-miscegenation laws, which in the name of the Cable Act in 1922, directly barred, okay? This straightforwardly barred marriage between white American women and the non-white alien men. Then, under other exclusion or even internment, so-called Japanese American internment, that happened during the World War II when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. So about 120,000 Japanese, including American-born Japanese Americans, were rounded up and put in 10 internment camps throughout the country, but mostly in the desert and the mountain states. And this initially, if you know, I don't need to go back to the earlier page. Why we said that Asian Americans Heritage Month is important. One is because of the Asian hate since the pandemic. Another important reason, because it's a historical contact of Asian migration, has been categorized with imperialism. Okay, it was a result of imperialism and global capitalist expansion. That's the same, okay? Same with immigration from Europe and other parts of the world. But Asian Americans, initially, there's this stereotypical image associated with them, so-called yellow peril. Okay, the yellow peril referring to their skin, because they are Mongoloids by race. So their skin is referred as yellow color. So this yellow peril, the term yellow peril was coined initially referring to the Mongol invasion in 13th century, 14th century, but this term resurfaced in late 19th century, okay, referring to Asian immigrants. And under those, excuse me, under this circumstance, we see there are a series of anti-Chinese and also other Asians attack occurred. The worst case, or the most notorious case, is a Chinese massacre in LA in 1871. I have a picture here. Excuse me, because I have allergy. So my throat is irritated from time to time. So in this act, it started as a town fight, okay, between two Chinese opposing towns, but it developed into riots. Okay, the white mobs attacked the Chinatown, or the Chinese quarters in LA, and many Chinese were killed or lynched. And there's an incident that a Chinese man who was wearing a ring, golden ring, the looters couldn't take the ring off his fingers. We just chopped his finger along with the ring. Okay, and then the Chinese quarters were set on fire. And other incidents, like in 1875, Page Act, which banned the entry of a Chinese woman. Okay, mainly the Chinese woman engaging in sex trade. Okay, and along with that, there's also a lot of sexual fetishization associated with early Chinese women. Okay, then as I mentioned earlier, in 1941, the entire Japanese immigrants and the Japanese American communities were attacked. 120,000 of them were interned. And not only physical attack or exclusion, but also there's a deportation and other cases such as murders. Okay, for example, the murder of Vincent Chen in 1882. For the younger audience, probably are not very familiar with this case, but this was a case which mobilized the Asian American community to realize that just the protests is not enough. They have to participate in American mainstream politics. Okay, it was one of the turning point. And in addition to this earlier stereotype of yellow peril, another stereotype is so-called modern minority that emerged in 1960s because a number of popular articles published in Times and US World News Report, okay, those popular magazines. And those articles portrayed Asian Americans as model. Okay. They are excellent in their school records. They have outstanding academic as well as occupational achievements. So they're model. But this model minority, ever since it was born, it has been discussed and on the debate among Asian American scholars and community members, because they believe this stereotype inaccurately reflected Asian Americans' reality. Because from the statistics, sure, yeah, you can see that Asian Americans by the different ethnic groups, like Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, their median family income looks higher, okay, than the national average. But people didn't know or overlooked the fact that most Asian Americans concentrated in the states of New York or Hawaii or California, where the salary is high as well as high living costs, okay? So they were stereotyped as model, therefore that hurt them in reality, because many federal or local government assistance cannot be fairly allocated to Asian Americans, because since they are portrayed as models, they have higher incomes, so they don't need public assistance. And there's many research reported that in San Francisco, actually, more than 30% of Asian Americans live on the poverty line, okay, as designated by the census and the national standard. However, the public assistance to Asian Americans was at a much smaller percentage. And also traditionally, Asian Americans have this historical baggage that they don't want to, or they feel shy, or they are afraid, or they're not familiar with American laws or practices. So they're not used to applying for federal aid, okay? Whereas the critics of a model minority sharply pointed out that Asian American as a model minority is deliberate scheme to pitch one group of minority against another. So both stereotypes are inaccurate. reflections of Asian Americans. So now we're going to look at the real picture, okay, through the historical records digged by scholars, by myself as well, from the historical archives, census, oral history interviews, newspaper articles, and all kinds of public and private records. So the Chinese, basically, initially they worked in mining. And the method they used in the gold mining is so-called panning. Okay, if you are expert or familiar with this, the method of get gold, okay, there are 3 ways. Okay. Hydraulic, as you use water to rush out. But the cheapest and the easiest method is so-called panning. Okay, so you go to the little brick, okay, where in the area where you have a heavy gold deposit, you use a pan. That's why it's called panning. The panning, you dig up those sand mixed with gold. You just you rock until, because gold is heavier than sand, and finally they will be settled in the end of the pan. Okay, so those are the images also commonly used by scholarships in the mining. Second type of job Chinese did was railroad building. The most heroic, we can see the contribution of Chinese in this area is so-called their contribution to the construction of a transcontinental railroad. The transcontinental railroad was started in 1863 because of the end of the Civil War and the rapid development of urbanization and industrialization that required the entire country to have cross-country economic development. So in the construction of this railroad during the 6th year of the course, because the railroad started from 2 ends, okay, the west end started from Sacramento, go eastward, and the east end started from Missouri River and go westward. And finally, they joined in Utah, okay, in 1869. So this work was very dangerous. Nobody was willing because it was paid very low. The average wage was just equal to the minimum wage of any blue-collar workers at the time. So many workers quitted, and those workers are mostly European immigrants. So they have the railroad construction companies had 2 big problems. One is capital, another is labor. So the capital shortage was solved by the US government granted them land. Okay, it's like gave them the land which is along the railroad construction for free. And but it's still facing the problem of shortage of labor. Then finally said, okay, let's try to hire some Chinese because the Chinese are known to work hard and work efficiently. So the early experimented succeeded. Then they began to hire large scale. In the by the end, there are more than 10,000 Chinese were hired in the western part of the railroad, which is 90% of total labor force. Okay, so we can imagine how much the Chinese contributed to this construction. And this transcontinental railroad made the US economy from continental. It connected east and west, connected the agricultural, the rural economy with industrial centers. And it made all the Western states, okay, there later on the growth, economic growth, social economic growth possible. But the construction was very dangerous because at that time, the explosion device was just in its infancy, and the people oftentimes don't know. They have no control. They don't know. Okay, they set the explosion. Sometimes explode, sometimes don't. Okay, so it's very random. So people say, "Oh, it's not exploding. Let me check." Then boom, it exploded. So the people, it was very common. People blow to parts and many people blow away during the construction. So that's why it's very difficult. This work is very heroic, okay, scholars believe. And the condition they worked in is really unhumane in some way, because they have to cross Sierra mountain, and which in the winter time is freezing. So they have to dig under the snow, dig the hole, vertical hole under the snow, 20 inches. Then they dig the tunnel from the on the snow, haul out the dirt. Then, okay, they use a device to lower down their provisions. Then the dirt and rock and all these things they need to take out, okay, will take it up, okay. So this is a terrible condition, and the people, died in explosion or the other accidents, or died in the frozen to death. That is one of the field Asian workers worked. Another major field is sugar plantation. So this included the Japanese, Koreans, Filipinos, as well as the Chinese. Okay, I didn't put it here because those are the major groups. And they worked in the also primitive living conditions and working conditions. As we can see from this picture, Asians generally they're shorter, smaller men. Okay, so those sugar canes are twice as their height. When you in the harvesting season, it's really hot, humid, and there's all kinds of bugs, mosquitoes bite them, but they have to wear clothes because this sugar cane, when you cut, their skin is very sharp, can cut your skin very easily. So under this condition, they worked and they lived in the quarters, which is made from a bunker house. And they lived there without public, without the private toilet, private kitchen. So they eat in the canteen, then they use the unsanitary water, public toilet, and very few women accompanied them. Japanese and the Koreans are the groups which had a smaller percentage of women accompanied the men. But generally, they are male-oriented. And the third field they worked in is farm. By 1900s, most Japanese who worked in the sugar plantation migrated to mainland now. And in California, there are about 2/3 of Japanese worked as farm laborers. As we have said earlier, okay, they were banned from owning farm. So most of them worked as tenant farmers. And the Koreans followed the Japanese. Okay, there's also regional concentration of the different ethnic groups. Koreans concentrated in San Joaquin Valley, while the Indians in the Southern California, and the Filipinos, which was the largest group, and they migrate from season to season according to the crops. While in the urban center, Asian Americans worked in those fields, and many Chinese, okay? So restaurant, laundry, and grocery are so-called the 3 pillars of early immigration economy. Okay, let's look at the restaurant. This picture is an elaborate restaurant, Chinese restaurant in San Francisco in 1890s. Okay, we can see the interior design and everything looks extravagant, right? Yeah, for that time. So the many Chinese engaged in restaurant, but the largest field which absorbed a lot of Chinese labor was laundry. Okay, the Chinese laundry started in 1840s in San Francisco, somewhere by a man. His name is Wally. Okay, by the historical records, he had the sign said washing, ironing. Okay, that's how it started. Then gradually, Chinese offered their laundry. And this laundry business also was stereotyped, Okay, it was not that the Chinese men are good at laundering clothes. Okay, they don't wash clothes in their own country, but they came here, found laundry was a business where they could survive or even thrive. Okay, because it was really easy, the business easy to start. All you need is a scrubbing board, a small place, and you can start your business. You don't need to have other skills required by major labor market or English language speaking ability. Okay. So many of the laundrymen worked in the country for decades, but were not able to speak an English word. Okay. Similarly, the grocery business also was a major one, supported many Asian Americans families, especially in the remote areas, okay, where they provide laundry supplies and cooking supplies to Chinese laborers and Chinese families in the areas. And the family, speaking of family and gender, which is a characteristic for Asian American, because Asian American generally, their community before 1960s was gender imbalanced. For example, the Chinese community was dubbed as a bachelor's society because initially the sex ratio between man and woman is 20 to 1, okay? 20 men to 1 woman. And so that's why there's a saying says that 1 Chinese woman serve 100 Chinese men. And a lot of community, the only woman available there was prostitutes. Okay, so therefore the Chinese women were also plagued by this negative stereotype of Chinese women as prostitutes. But in reality, most women, the early women, were the merchants' wives, because the merchant was a group which was exempt from Chinese exclusion laws. So consequently, their wife could also come. So in those different ethnic groups, bachelor society was common until 1960s, when large number of Asians are allowed to come. So then finally, this gender reached the balance. And the Japanese, their marriage pattern was mostly in early time known as a picture bride, where the Japanese send their picture. Okay, the Japanese laborers send their pictures to their home. Their parents would find a proper mate. Then they would perform a marriage ceremony in Japan. Then this woman would transfer her registration to her husband's household. Then she could come as a picture bride. Okay, the Koreans had similar practice, but the early immigrants of Koreans, they came more compared to other groups, more like a family group. They're about 20% or to 30% of women followed their men. And the Filipinos is a similar situation. The Indians also came mostly as bachelors. So in the Southern California or Imperial Valley, there is a marriage pattern, so-called Hindu Mexican families. Okay, their scholar did case study on this type of marriages. Okay, the causes of this low ratio of women uneven sex is because of the exclusion laws we said earlier and anti-miscegenation laws. So the Asian American society was very uneven. But even within those restrictions, Asian American immigrant women also experienced, okay, myself, because I started my research on Chinese American immigrant women. I studied their marriage patterns, their gender roles, okay? So the most Asian American women experienced this three type of gender role changes. One, in this country, they become joint hands of their household, while in their ancestral land, they were not able to do that. And number two, they became providers of their families, and they also were co-decision makers along with their husbands. Okay, so those are the tremendous change. I'm very sorry we can't go into the deep. Then another important aspect of Asian American life is their community structure. So we all know that, when we talk about the Chinese, we think about the Chinatown, right? When we look at the Japanese, we might think about, okay, Little Tokyo or Japan. In San Francisco, there's a Japantown. In San Jose, there's a Japantown. LA, you have Koreatown, right? Or Little Manila, Little India, Little Saigon. Those are so-called urban ethnic enclave. So this is a community structure prevalent before 1960s. But after 1960s, the Asian American community formation began to change. So we see those important characteristics. One is the ethnic community economy is combined with tourist economy. Okay, so the many cities also consciously encouraged the ethnic economy and helped the ethnic tourist industry in those respective cities. Another structure, I coined the term cultural communities in my book, Chinese in St. Louis, Chinese in Chicago, and others. And this term has also been widely accepted by scholars, okay, so-called cultural communities, because in San Francisco or New York, we can easily see Chinatowns. But in the smaller communities where the Asian American population is not significant, but still, by census, you see they are quite sizable. Okay, they are 20, 30,000, but you cannot easily locate a Chinatown. So where are they? So they're dispersed in suburban ethnic communities, co-ethnic communities, but they gather together during the weekend in Chinese church, Chinese language schools, and various Chinese cultural events. Okay, like here. This picture I took last year in St. Louis Chinese communities, so-called Chinatown, Chinese Cultural Days, okay, not Chinatown, Chinese Cultural Days. So this event was visited by tens of thousands of Chinese as well as general population every year. Okay, so those are the newer type of structures of Asian community formations. And the current change.
Dr. Ling, this is Rhett. I'm so sorry. We've reached the 4 o'clock time, and I want to give people an opportunity to ask you questions. I know we got a little off base.
Okay.
Would you mind if we go to the question and answer section just so people can have an opportunity to talk to you?
Okay, great. So then I'll skip this page. Okay, we can come to the question. I will be happy to entertain any questions, because I'm not sure the questions raised on the question board ahead of time. So I have a couple here for consideration, but Red, please direct me to the questions you see is more representative. Yeah, because I can't just read them without my without my glasses. Okay.
It's okay, absolutely. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Ling, for being here with us. And if you want to unshare your screen, I want you to be able to see the folks that are in the room.
Okay, I will unshare it.
Yes. I want to thank you so much for being here and persevering through the disruption that we had earlier. Thank you so much for your scholarship and your spirit and everything that you've done. And I want to thank each and every one of you all that are here, whether you're a part of the Compass Family Services team or our greater community. Thank you for bearing with us as we were dealing with that disruption. And there's no place for that. With the time we have remaining, because we're already a little over time, I wanted to know if anyone had a question, because it's always important to us that people have an opportunity to talk to these scholars when the opportunity presents themselves. So if you have a question, by all means, you can raise your hand. We'd love to do one. If not, you can email me and I'm already in contact with Dr. Ling. We exchange emails a lot, and I can make sure that you get access to any information that we had to conclude early with. So with that, does anybody have a question before we thank Dr. Ling for her time and in today's talk? Dr. Ling, we have one question for you, and then we're going to end today's talk. And that what would be your advice to the next generation on bringing more awareness to Asian American history?
Okay, thank you. I see this question is raised by Madeline, right? It's really very good and very important. Actually, this is crucial to us. How I'm just a scholar, okay? You can take my advice with a grain of salt. I have given a lot of talks, lectures on this issue. So here, I wouldn't say it's my personal advice, but it would be a summary of what I have studied and what I have read from various scholarly books and activists. Okay, so generally the advice would be that if you are Asian American, okay, for the young generation, it is important to know your roots. Okay, so this lecture is a beginning, but you can do more reading. A good place to start is my book because it's comprehensive and complete. It covers all the Asian groups, can give you a good foundational knowledge. If you're interested in that, you can further study to do more. Even this field is emerging and relatively new, but we already have lots of excellent scholarship, okay, available. You can get them from Amazon or other venues. And my book, Asian American History, is, if you're interested in buying that, you can get it from Amazon as well as Rutgers University Press. If you directly contact Rutgers University Press, I'll be very happy to send you an author discount, 30% discount. So you can get a discount price along with free shipping. Okay, so that is one. And also we're trying to, we means Asian American scholars, as well as K-12 teachers and community activists. We're advocating to adopt Asian American history into the general public education, into K-12 required course. So right now, there are a number of states already implemented it, okay? It's they already assigned Asian American history as a mandate course, mandate subject. Okay, so this is number one, we need to raise our awareness. Number two, we need to be brave, okay? Because generally the Asians confined by the Confucian ideology always think, okay, I don't want to stand out. As long as it doesn't touch me, it doesn't bother me, it's fine. Okay, but you know, if it's not you today, it might be you tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So if we're not willing to stand out, so the criminals or those people with prejudice always have no fear, right? To victimize a certain group or certain individuals. So we need to be aware, number one. Number two, be brave to stand out. Number three, we also need to be strategic. Okay? It's not you okay stand there. You need to be strategic. That it means to stand out, but strategically. So that means first, report to police or other relevant group or organizations, okay, or authorities, and have a public rally and join other ethnic groups, ethnic minority groups, okay? So that is why we have the term Asian American Pacific Islanders, or today's term AANHPI. And not only that, different diverse Asian Americans as a group, but also we need to join other minorities in this fight against Asian hate. And there's other advice I'm sure you can get from your community leaders and the seniors. Does that answer the question?
That was absolutely amazing, Dr. Ling. Thank you so much for your time. Thank each and every one of you all for being here. Again, you can find Dr. Ling's work, Asian American History, on Amazon or through the Rutgers University Press. I hope everybody has a fantastic day on purpose. Thank you, everyone.